Today in Social Studies, we will be looking at Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. How did Carnival begin? Let us look at the video to find out. Many years ago in Trinidad and Tobago, there lived a lot of French settlers. So they came from France and they settled in Trinidad. They began to live here. And they were very rich. And they lived in beautiful houses. And they had a lot of land and sugarcane plantations. And they had slaves working for them. And every year before the Lenten season began, these French people will have a big party, a big masquerade ball. Now, Lent is a special time for Christians, and it is a time where they fast and they pray. And when they fast, they don't eat meat and they stay away from all the parties and all the dancing, and it's a special time for them. And therefore, the French people, just before Lent began, they celebrated because they knew for that Lenten season, which will last for 40 days, they would not be able to party and they will not be able to dance and they will not be able to eat meat because they had to go into a period of fasting. So they would celebrate with a big party, a masquerade ball, where they will wear costumes and they will dance and they will have a good time. The slaves were not allowed to go to the masquerade balls. So they had secret parties of their own where they would dance and where they would have fun, but they had to hide from their masters. This tradition continued for many years until slavery was abolished. Now, abolished is just a big word, which means that there was no more slavery. So they did not have slaves anymore, and the slaves were free, and they could do as they please. So then they took their parties, their own masquerade balls, into the streets, and they dressed in costumes and they danced on the streets. And this is how Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago started. When the slaves were freed, they took their parties into the streets and they danced in costumes. Over the years, the tradition of the slaves continued, and eventually slavery was no more. It was abolished. So we didn't have slaves anymore, and people were allowed to celebrate freely. And that is how Carnival began in Trinidad and Tobago. What did we learn in this lesson? We learned that Carnival was started by the French. They had a masquerade ball just before Lent began. The slaves were not allowed to join in the fun. They started having secret parties of their own. They danced in costumes on the streets. And this is how Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago began. Here I have an exercise for you to do. Write true or false after each of the following. Remember, when something is not true, we say it is false. So let us look at the sentences. Carnival was started by the French. So you will write the sentence and then write if it is true or if it is false. They had parties after Lent began. Slaves were not allowed in the parties. So you are going to pause the video, complete the exercise, and then you will submit it to me. I have come to the end of my lesson. Remember, children, always keep reaching for the stars.